The healthcare and the pharma industry actually has huge expectations from this budget from the finance minister. It's one of the industries which has been ignored completely over the last 4 to 5 years, and therefore there is a very long list of expectations from the industry. The government has clearly said that it is looking at Make in India and innovations as a driver for its current budget, and frankly a lot of demands of the industry really fit into these two planks. If I look at starting with innovation, it's all around research and development. While there are currently deductions of up to 200% available for certain R&D expenditure, that's extremely limited, and the government should actually expand that scope so that innovators are not prohibited and do get the full incentive related to it. For example, the current R&D spend is restricted only to in-house expenditure. So a lot of spend which happens in third-party contract research development places, or for clinical trials, whether within the country or outside the country, or a lot of legal and other costs for registering the IP is currently not covered or getting litigated on whether it is covered for R&D deduction. So the government should actually clarify and expand the scope of what is covered under an R&D deduction at 200% under the Income Tax Act. In addition to that, last budget the government actually imposed service tax on clinical trials. This is certainly an additional burden, and the government should do away with this service tax imposition at least till GST comes into place, and ensure that there is no additional cost relating to clinical trials that the sector incurs. Finally, even the royalty rates for an innovation which is commercialized or which Indian companies want to use to further innovation in India incurs a 25% rate of tax under the Indian law. Most treaties talk about 10 to 15%, and therefore the government should actually try and rationalize it at a much lower rate so that it does not incur a huge cost to Indian companies trying to access that innovation in the country. Lastly, on transfer pricing, the safe harbor rules talk about a cost plus 29% for contract R&D. That's an extremely high margin for generic research and development, and the government should actually reconsider and make it more at a more rational and affordable level, so that the whole clinical trials industry is further incentivized and more investment comes into the country. If I look at the manufacturing plank, frankly there are 2-3 areas where clarity should be provided. The first thing is there is a complete inverted duty structure. So inputs actually incur a much higher rate of excise duty compared to the formulations which are sold in the marketplace, and therefore there is a huge credit which is accumulated and lying with the manufacturers, which is really not incentivizing or providing clarity to manufacturers. And the government should actually do away with that inverted duty structure and impose almost the same level of duties as for formulations on inputs. If one looks at the further amendment which got made in the last budget, where the Senvet credit has been limited to a 6-month period, that's going to put a further overall burden on credits. The government should provide clarity on foreign direct investment guidelines. What is brownfield, where the government approval is required, is completely not clear, and therefore expansion or setting up new facilities, whether they are brownfield or not, is resulting into a lot of delays. In case the government provides clarity that it is only restricted to acquisitions, it would actually help the sector and plan themselves better. Also in acquisitions, if there are guidelines which can be provided, then further investment including in manufacturing operations can be made even through the foreign direct investment route. Finally, overall, if I look at healthcare, the overall infrastructure is quite lacking, and to that extent therefore the government should relook at providing enough incentives to create healthcare facilities. There used to be a standard deduction available up to 2013 for hospitals set up of 100 bed and above capacity. That deduction has not been carried forward, and the government should actually bring it in, as there is a huge gap between the infrastructure required and the current capacity which exists. In addition to that, medical technology or medical devices incur a depreciation at the rate of 15%. The technology changes quite rapidly, and like the software industry, it would be useful if these medical equipments or devices actually get a depreciation rate of 16%, 60% like the software industry. Finally, there are a whole host of other nuances which would help provide some clarity to this sector. The biggest one relates to the marketing spend. Currently, there is a disallowance based on advertising, marketing, promotion spend that the industry incurs on transfer pricing, and equally the MCI guidelines are used by the tax authorities to disallow a huge amount of marketing and other promotion spend. A lot of this is actually required by the companies to provide enough literature to the doctors and to access the market, and therefore the government should actually rationalize and provide clarity around these guidelines so that there are no disallowances that the companies face both under transfer pricing and under the normal guidelines. Finally, it would help in providing clarity on transfer pricing by bringing in the rollback provisions very clearly that the government came out with in the last budget. What are the guidelines that the government would look to roll back the APA for the past years would help bring in that level of clarity. So overall, the industry is looking forward to the finance minister actually looking and acceding to some of the requests that the industry has been making for several years. And hopefully with a new government and an expected beyond budget, the industry's request should find some place in the budget speech.